Guinness Extra Stout is synonymous with get-together moments. Crisp and balanced with bitter-sweet roasted notes and a dry finish, Guinness Extra Stout has been enjoyed all over the world for over 200 years. Guinness has always been about communion, power, and goodness. It's ingrained in its DNA, so the next time you're looking for a beer to share with the people you love, reach for Guinness Extra Stout and let the good times roll. Please drink responsibly. Guinness Extra Stout, imported by Diageo Beer Company USA, New York, New York.
Looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection for a wide variety of statistics, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and an enormous selection of players and stat options are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million football fans who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/get100 and use code GET100. That's code GET100 at prizepicks.com/get100 for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Welcome to 3 Yards Per Carry, a podcast covering the Miami Dolphins and the NFL. Now, here's your hosts, Chris, Alf, and Simon.
Tagovailoa, hunt the block, Tua on the move, going deep, speed race, he's got Hill! He's got Hill! He beat James! What a play! To the 20-yard line of LA!
What a play by Tua, and what a play by Tyreek Hill.
Tagovailoa, a dart! Frequent 9-yard line! Brought down by James, 15-yard strike! First and goal, Miami. Third down and goal. Oklahoma is in the backfield. And they go to the end zone and caught. Hill, touchdown! Touchdown! The Dolphins have recaptured the lead. 4th and 13, they need their own 45. Here they come! Phillips has got him! Phillips has got him! Miami's defense with a huge play! On downs it goes to the Dolphins! And Miami is going to win it in come-from-behind fashion. Tagovailoa, 466 through the air. Hill had 215 receiving yards. An incredible game.
Miami has the Dolphins, the greatest football team. We take the ball from goal to goal like no one's ever seen. We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl, 'cause we're the...
Welcome to 3 Yards Per Carry. The Miami Dolphins, our Miami Dolphins, are 1-0 after a magnificent win yesterday against the LA Chargers. I think all three of us are sort of slightly still close to the roof from where we were just on our way down from the amazing buzz of the opening weekend. I am Simon Clancy. I have my Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, as always. Chris and Alf are with me. Before we get into it, and we'll slightly mix it up this week, but before we get into it, just to let you know, our show is brought to you, as always, by our good friends at Prize Picks. Use the new promo code, that's 3 yards, 3, the number 3, YARDS, yards. Get a $100 match bonus on your $100 deposit. Also by BetterEdge, go to betteredge.com/5 reasons. And get $20 just for signing up. And then 3 new sponsors, really. GoPuff.com, use promo code WELCOME1010. One time we'll get the same promo code for every single one, and you'll be absolutely flying. But welcome 1010. Get $10 off your first 10 orders. By Factor Meals, use promo code 3, the number 3, yards per carry, all one word, and then 50, yards per carry 50. Get 50% off your first order. And a great big welcome to discountlots.com. You can call 661-485-4086 and use the promo code 5FIVE for 10% discount to discover how land ownership is made easy. I tell you what isn't made easy, and that's enduring 3 hours of a track meet between the Dolphins and the Chargers, which we majestically came out on top of. We will attack 3 of the major subjects for the first half of the show. In the second half of the show, we'll bounce around some of the things we liked, some of the things we didn't like. But boys, it was a hell of a way to start the season. And, you know, just looking at the media reaction today, whether it's Peter King, whether it was Albert Breer, whether it was the guys at the Ringer, fuck me, even Bill Simmons was giving love to Tua.
Yes.
Whether it was Mike Greenberg, whether it was Peter Schrager on GFMB, it doesn't matter who it was. The love was flowing for Tua, for Tyreek, but especially really for Tua. And kind of our friend, my friend, your friend, Kevin Clark wrote a great piece today, or actually did a podcast today. And if you haven't heard it, I tweeted it, but what he said was, one thing I hate about the media is our reluctance to change our minds when we are clearly wrong. Tua I gave up on during the Flores era when I shouldn't have. Maybe I got bullied into it, but he is great. He is legitimately great. And we should not be having the debate about whether or not he's good. We should be having the debate about how great he is and where in that rarefied air he stands. Now, next week is next week, but we are basking in the glow of 1-0, gents. It was a famous game and a great victory.
Absolutely. And for those of you that are too young to remember this is what Dan Marino felt like. Okay? And not Dan Marino, I'm talking about, you know, some random November in 1993. I'm talking about Dan Marino at his best. This is what it felt like. This is absolutely elite quarterback play. He was the best quarterback of the weekend. And yeah, I understand he threw that interception. They credit him with that fumble. They should petition the NFL for that and try to credit that to the team, because that's Connor Williams leaving a snap short. The interception, in my opinion, was actually interference by J.C. Jackson. He was absolutely fabulous. I'm over the moon with his performance. This is the best he's ever played in a Dolphin uniform.
Chris, I think people talk about the Baltimore game and the 6 touchdowns, and actually we kind of forget a little bit that actually it was fairly spotty for 2.5 quarters of play. It wasn't amazing play. I mean, you know, there were some fantastic throws in the first half and fantastic throws in the third quarter, but really it was the fourth quarter that was unbelievable. But to me, yesterday was 60 minutes of, you know, pure brilliance all the way through, really. I mean, the interception, yeah, it was probably pass interference, but also you kind of throw in a sort of a jump ball to Braxton Berrios, which is not ideal, but nevertheless, we can kind of gloss over that. But just generally, you know, some of the throws he made were the best. You know, I think he made 2 of the best throws I've ever seen him make yesterday. And you and I often talk about that throw he made as a rookie against Kansas City in the fourth quarter. And there's the throw against the Bengals last year before he got injured to Mike Gesicki, where he somehow layered it in. But I thought the 3rd and 15 that he picked up 17 yards to Berrios and the 47-yarder to Tyreek were just as good as it gets. And if, you know, anybody else in the league makes those throws, we're rightfully talking it up, and thankfully people are rightfully talking it up.
And then finishing it off by, you know, somehow stabbing that fade ball right into Tyreek Hill's heart.
The late hands by Tyreek never moved his hands until literally the ball was it. The corner just had no idea that he was even going to him. He never raised his hands once. It was fun. I mean, just phenomenal all around.
Yeah, it was really, I mean, everybody says that it's the inventiveness of Mike McDaniel and the execution of Tua Tagovailoa, and all of it is very true. It was a stupendous performance by him. The pass interference on the interception, you're right. It was it was probably pass interference, not probably, it was. J.C. Jackson pushed off, and that's, you know, he got Braxton Berrios knocked onto the ground with a push off, and that's the reason actually J.C. was able to get his body turned around and even get that interception. and the officials missed it, but whatever. But from an offensive standpoint, yeah, Tua did actually on the play find the single coverage, the man-to-man coverage, whereas everybody else was mired in a thicket of defenders. But it's just bad call, almost like a bad coaching decision or a bad play call or something like that. And so, that one, you just got to rely on your quarterback to give up on it. It was 3rd and long, forget it, take the points. So, yeah, there was some bad in there, but overall, this was, I think what it felt like for the Ravens game to me, though, is just the sheer, the magnitude of their offensive, abilities, and perhaps it was just 4 quarters of the fourth quarter of the Ravens game. I don't know, but it felt a lot that way, and this was one for the books. This was one that we should remember for a while, and it's going to matter in playoff seeding, because this is a very good Chargers team that will be in the hunt for the playoffs. And this is also an AFC game, and both of those things are gonna, in a very tight AFC that has some good teams in it. This one is probably going to matter down the stretch.
Yeah, it was. It was nerve-wracking, but it was a lot of fun, wasn't it? It was a lot of fun. Look, let's carry on. Let's pick up topic number 1 and carry on with these two. Actually, I'm just reading as I'm talking, and Mike McDaniel actually has just said that his favorite throw was actually the touchdown pass that he had yesterday. In that it was almost like a team. There was so much involved in that, in terms of the way that all of that combination of that play worked together. But also, he said defensively, getting the ball back after Cater with the blitz and those sorts of things, it kind of made that touchdown was really a team effort, which I thought was quite interesting. Anyway, look, Tua and Tyreek, we know about the numbers, we know about what they did yesterday, but a good friend of mine, a knowledgeable NFL friend, somebody who's watched the game for 20 years, is as knowledgeable as anybody that I know, said to me last night, texted me last night, say, I genuinely believe, and there is a kind of sense of prisoner of the moment type stuff with these things, but he said, I genuinely believe that Tyreek Hill might be the best wide receiver I've ever seen. And you encompass Jerry Rice in that, and you encompass, all of the great players going right the way back to Don Hutson. And there's some comparisons between what Tyreek did yesterday and what Hutson did, without shoulder pads back in the 40s and 50s or whenever it was that he played. But he is uncoverable, Alf. It doesn't matter what you do. And you look at what the offense does in terms of how, historically teams just play so little man coverage because Tua is essentially just torching people. And you can say that's great coaching, but it's also great quarterbacking, but it's also great receiving. He is utterly unplayable. And Rex Ryan said on Get Up this morning that, you've got to get in his face, and you've got to, you can't do it. You can't lay a hand on him. You can't touch him. And we'll talk about the alignments in a moment, but he's a special player, isn't he? And shows absolutely zero sign of slowing down.
Absolutely. And Shannon Sharp, who is now in the hot take business, but he's not going to hot take with a football opinion, called him the best weapon in the history of the sport. He said,
weapon's a great word for him, actually.
Yeah, he said Jerry Rice is the best receiver he's ever seen. So he wouldn't put him as the best receiver, but he's the best weapon of all time. And they were debating, Shannon Sharp and Dan Orlovsky, who was a better weapon, Randy Moss or Tyreek Hill. That's all you need to know, right? You hear that debate, and that's all you really need to know. It's
what a debate.
What a debate, right? To have.
I mean, I see layers, right? Because I grew up watching Jerry Rice. I saw Randy Moss, and to me, Rice and Moss are the two best receivers I've ever seen. But I think of generationally, Rice is kind of that first era of my fandom. Moss sits in the middle as the best, and Tyreek sits in the middle. And this is not to do an injustice to Jamar Chase or to Justin Jefferson, both of whom I think are phenomenal. But Hill is just different. And listening to the guys last night talking about how hard he works off the field, and I was looking at some of Brandon Thorne's cut-ups today on Twitter, and you see Tyreek blocking on the big run that Raheem gets down to the goal line just before the touchdown to Craycraft, and the touchdown to Tyreek at the end. And this is a guy that just goes full gas for 60 minutes.
Yeah, and Tyreek Hill said something after the game which I found instructive. He said that when he went to the sideline after the turnover, that McDaniel and Tua came back to him and said, what do you think about Z Sky? And Tyreek told him, you know what? Let's run it. I'm going to give him a different release, and I could probably get off. And sure enough, he gave him a slightly different release. I believe he gave him a stutter, and he broke inside. And, of course, he cleared J.C. Jackson, and it's a touchdown on the next play. And then you see he catches it. He does like his little airplane thing, and he tosses his helmet on the sideline 40 yards down the field. Starts running up and down, losing his mind, and Mike McDaniel tries to catch up with him. And you could tell that he loved the implementation of what they thought about on the sideline actually working exactly to a T on the field. And when he's zoned in like that, and he has, in my opinion, he had something personal with this game, because I think it came from the quarterback and possibly the head coach. And I think Chris mentioned something like that on Twitter, and maybe he wants to talk about it here. Man, he is so hard to beat. I fear for that Kansas City Chiefs secondary in Germany. I can't wait for that game, although they have a few games before then. But can you imagine what he has in store for that one?
Yeah, Chris, it kind of takes me on to the second subject, which is really the offense. And you kind of go back to week 1 of last year, week 2 of last year, when McDaniel and Tua first got together. And, there was those kind of kamikaze style RPOs with Tua, where he's sort of reading the first level and trying to push the ball vertically with post wheels and rail wheels. And, nobody else in the league was running those sort of first level reads to push the ball downfield. And now the evolution is very much more what we expected it to be, which is that kind of, deeper shots from first level reads, but Tua's ability to turn his back to on play action, which he did a multitude of times. And you kind of feel like McDaniel just went into the lab for the whole summer. And I talked about it last week in terms of, and you talked about it on Twitter, very, very apposite talked about it on Twitter in terms of that kind of Brandon Staley and the kind of the Brandon Staley game, as McDaniel called it in the press conference, and laughed, which I thought was almost borderline disrespectful in a way. It was kind of very, very interesting to see McDaniel talk about that. But just what he did in terms of the leverage on the touchdown that Alf just talked about there, changing the leverage points, I saw Tyreek lined up out wide on both sides, X, Z, Y. I saw him in the slot. I saw him as an H-back. I saw him as a tight end, and I saw him in the backfield. But those last-minute jet motions that McDaniel has introduced, and I saw Smythe running. I saw Mostert. I saw Craycraft. I saw Tyreek, and I saw Jalen all run, and probably more. All of them run. All of a sudden, they'd line up as an H-back, and then in like a second and a half before the snap, they'd suddenly jet motion, and just opens up the creativity of McDaniel's brain was just astonishing yesterday. And it was vintage. It was like play calling like you've never. It was just the play calling of a madman.
Yeah, and let me say something here before Chris gets off here. There was a play in the red zone where McDaniel calls a short motion with Raheem Mostert, and if you watch the play, Derwin James identifies, Mostert, and it's obvious that it's man. And you see that Derwin James vacates the hash, and he moves a little bit off of the hash. And Mostert does his little short motion, and he goes to the flat, and Tua throws a dig right behind Derwin James to Tyreek Hill. And who makes the tackle? Derwin James. And when he makes the tackle, you can see that Derwin James is like, I was standing right there, and you moved me with that short motion, didn't you? And it's obvious. You see it in film, and you can see that Derwin James is like, oh, wait a minute. There's too much space out there for Mostert. Let me see if I could cheat a little bit. Oh, no, they threw it behind me to Tyreek Hill. And here's a gain of 14.
Chris?
I think that if you're looking at last year and some of the criticisms that they faced on offense when things weren't necessarily working in their favor, is they kept trying to go to some of the same concepts, that some of the same route combinations that they work. And McDaniel's whole deal is that he likes to get to those route combinations from a bunch of different ways, right? And from a bunch of different looks, from a bunch of different motions, from a bunch of, using formation shifting and stuff like that. And it's sort of like, he went back into the lab and tinkered, and you were, well, did he come up with a bunch of new concepts and stuff? Well, I suppose there might be, but what we saw in this game is really what he just came up with was even more ways to get to them. Even more ways to get to the same thing. And in this case, instead of instead of giving the defense an opportunity to communicate with one another and adjust their coverages according to what sort of motion and formation shifting Miami was doing. This was more short burst motion, short motions, and there just wasn't enough time for the defense to communicate with each other and adjust to them. And I think it's funny because they used those short motions to do that, but then of course the defense is going to counter by, okay, well we're going to have an understanding, and if we see this, and you saw Eric Kendricks on one play, he reacted to the motion very well and very nearly got his hand on another ball, and yet Tua managed to squeak it by because it was just that sort of magic day for him. But I think that they played off of that now too, and that's where the play that Alf talked about just now, where Raheem Mostert kind of went a little bit in motion. It got Derwin James to show what he was going to do in reaction to the motion, and then, but that wasn't really the play. So Tua then signals what's his name, Tyreek Hill, to come inside, at speed, and so he gets a running head start, sort of parallel to the line of scrimmage, and then goes and runs exactly the route that Alf just talked about. They just really found more ways to get to it, and there were some signs. Listen, sometimes you get too cute too. And I think that the Braxton Berrios interception is maybe an instance of getting a little bit too cute. There was definitely a play where Savon Ahmed circled around the backfield and then came out for a pass in the flat, and Raheem Mostert trailed right behind him, also looking for a pass in the flat, and Tua could have hit either one of them. Just based on how the defense was reacting to it, and he chose to hit Mostert, and Ahmed had to go from looking back for the pass to turning around and trying to block the corner, and he completely missed the guy. He just fell on the ground. And Raheem Mostert instead gained about 5 yards on it. Well, somehow he gained 5 yards. It looked like he probably should have gained no yards. There was an instance, another one of those underthrows that people talk about. Oh, Tua doesn't have an arm and stuff like that. That was actually another instance of probably just getting too cute. Like too many dance steps happened on that play before the throw, and so it was not setting. So I think that's just all these instances showing that McDaniel went in the lab, created a lot more variability for how to get to the same stuff that he wants to do. And he has his favorite stuff, and I think the offense and the players have their favorite stuff, and it was great.
None of this was possible without the play of Kendall Lamb, Isaiah Wynn, Connor Williams, Rob Hunt, and the much maligned Austin Jackson on a much maligned offensive line, Alf. But yesterday, no sacks, 2 hits. I think Tua took pretty much. He was clean pretty much the entire game. Yes, he had to make a couple of plays where he moved inside and up and out of the pocket to make terrific throws. And we talked about the 3rd and 15 to Berrios, the 3rd and 10 deep ball for 47 to Tyreek. But the offensive line deserves a lot of praise for what they did, as does Butch Barry. We've touched on this a couple of times, but they were excellent yesterday, I thought. And, tackle to tackle, I thought it was Austin Jackson's probably his best game as a Dolphin. I thought Kendall Lamb looked extremely good. Put some videos up on 3 yards on OnlyFins, our Discord channel this morning, just showing how he does a great job of absorbing pressure, bending his knees, and really winning leverage, moving his hands, keeping his hands moving, relocating them all the time to control and to steer Joey Bosa as he did much of yesterday. But Alf, those boys did an excellent job.
Absolutely, and I'll be brief with this because I know we got to go to break. Austin Jackson has a rep, and it's the end around to Ezukama that almost scores. When you talk about an eye-popping rep for an offensive tackle, this is what it looks like. The guy seals the edge. Joey Bosa scraping down the line. He gets off of the edge past when Ezukama's almost past him. He gets into a full sprint, full sprint, gets into Joey Bosa's face, tosses him out of the club. And if Eric Azukama was a little smarter, he could have just jumped on his back and he would have carried him into the end zone. That was, I guess, what they envisioned when they scouted him as an athlete. It hasn't shown up yet, but good God, did it show on that tape. And if I had to give one award to one offensive lineman in this game, yeah, Kendall Lamb deserves his flowers, but I thought Robert Hunt was absolutely stellar in his play today in that game.
Chris?
Yeah, think about something on the face of it. They threw an overwhelming majority of their plays were pass plays, right? And they were going against Joey Bosa and, Pro Bowler, lots of accolades. Khalil Mack, as many accolades as he has. Is he the same player he once was? Probably not. But there were good pass rushers there. And they were just pass all day, including a bunch of 3rd and longs and no sacks. And so for a line with Kendall Lamb as one of your tackles and Austin Jackson as the other, that is absolutely remarkable. Probably much to the Chargers' shame as well, but it's also to the credit of what McDaniel was doing in terms of giving those pass rushers extra things to think about, whether it be screens or whether it be motions, jet motions, and just players in the backfield, as Akonma was in the backfield twice. I think that he gave them a lot to think about. And then he also, listen, when you have receivers like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, who you trust to get open, sometimes they brought in 7 players, 8 players to protect. And so they actually helped that offensive line quite a bit in pass protection, and knowing that they could just put those receivers out there even against an entire secondary, and listen, only 1 or 2 guys is going to try to cover them at a time, and they were still getting open. So just great job just in totality by the offensive line as well as the coaching staff.
You're listening to 3 Yards Per Carry. We will be back shortly with 3 good, 3 bad. Don't forget all of our sponsors, which we'll touch upon before the end. We should be back shortly. This is the best podcast for the 1-0 Miami Dolphins.
Let me introduce you to DiscountLots.com. You can become a landowner for less than $500 down and in less than 5 minutes. You heard that right. Discount Lots has transformed land ownership. No more hefty down payments, fees, and credit score worries. Now, imagine owning a piece of property with just a $1 down payment and $300 documentation fee. DiscountLots.com makes that possible. And here's the kicker. You will get an extra 10% off any property by using the promo code 5. That's the word 5, F-I-V-E. Discount Lots makes land ownership accessible to everyone with no credit checks, no background checks, and no income checks. Go to discountlots.com today and make land ownership easy. Again, use the promo code 5, F-I-V-E, for 10% off any property on the site, or you can just call 661-485-4086 and tell them the promo code to get started. That's 5, F-I-V-E. Get started and begin your dream of land ownership with DiscountLots.com. Let me tell you about PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. We are the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks is really simple to play. I can make my picks, submit my entry in less than 60 seconds, and just leave it alone. They have quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Personally, I play it all season long. During the NFL season, on Thursday nights, it really spices up those boring Thursday night football matchups. And if you know a lot about the Miami Dolphins, like we do, you can cash in. Go to prizepicks.com/3 yards. That's the number 3 yards. And use the promo code 3 yards. That's the number 3 yards. And they will match your first deposit up to $100. And it's a one-time rollover. Go to prizepicks.com/3 yards. That's the number 3 yards. prizepicks.com/3 yards.
Looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection for a wide variety of statistics, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and an enormous selection of players and stat options are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million football fans who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/get100 and use code GET100. That's code GET100 at prizepicks.com/get100 for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Are you a South Florida property owner with an insurance claim? Are you dealing with water, mold, or fire damage to your home or business? Are you having trouble locating a 5-star rated general contractor that is fully licensed, certified, and insured? If the answer is yes, then Water Cleanup of Florida is here for you 24 hours a day. With over 60 years of combined experience, Michael, Robert, Jorge, and their team is prepared to handle any size property damage disaster. When an unexpected damage occurs to your home or business, you need specialized, fast, and reliable services. Water Cleanup of Florida understands the impact and stress an unexpected disaster may cause. Their objective is to make the cleanup and insurance claim process painless and hassle-free. Water Cleanup of Florida is also a licensed general contractor, so they provide the A to Z service, one-stop shopping that busy homeowners and business owners require. Water Cleanup of Florida is now an authorized dealer of Eurocraft cabinets, so premier kitchen, bath, and laundry cabinetry, countertops, and other accessories are available for your viewing at their showroom in Boca Raton. Or do you prefer to shop from your home or office? Then Water Cleanup will send you one of our design specialists to you with samples and products that fit your style and budget. Call Michael anytime on his personal cell phone if you have any questions at 954-579-0356. That's 954-579-0356. Or visit their website at wcufl.com. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram. And please check out their more than 80 5-star reviews on Google and Facebook. Water Cleanup of Florida. If you have the schmutz, they have the guts.
I'm Jalen Phillips, and you're listening to 3 Yards Per Carry.
Welcome back to 3 Yards Per Carry. I'm Simon Clancy, joined as always by Mosta and Ahmed, Alfredo Arteaga, and Chris Kaufman. You can find out between yourselves who you are. Don't forget our sponsors, Prize Picks, Better Edge, GoPuff.com, Factormeals.com, and our new sponsor, and a warm welcome to them, DiscountLots.com. All the details of all your promo codes, all the money off that you can get at the top of the show. So just hit rewind, go back, and you can listen again to how excited we were at the top of the show and how excited we remain. Right, a new feature that we're going to kick off this week, and it's going to be short, bouncing around hopefully. And if it's not, I'll tell them both off. Essentially, three good things, 3 bad things that they both liked. We had a bit of a discussion on WhatsApp earlier on, and Chris got really annoyed because he didn't want to talk about Justin Bethel. So if you're listening, Justin, it's Chris's fault that you're not being celebrated this week, not anybody else's. So I'd just like to make that clear. And when you're a radio presenter or whatever you go on to be in the Miami area, please don't invite Chris Kaufman on, because essentially he's just mugged you off in front of 10,000 people. So I just want to put that out there. Okay, so Christopher Kaufman, my Raheem Mostert, take it away with your first 3 good, 3 bad that you saw, and start with your 3 good.
Well, I think first is the versatility in the usage of Tyreek and Jalen together. I think I just talked about this a little bit on Twitter. You know, part of the reason that Tyreek could go 100 miles an hour at all times is, you know, he played, I think, like 44 of the 67 snaps. You know, it's not the entire game. He's not on the field. That's a much lower percentage than last year. And if you look at it, last year they were gaining a really good amount of efficiency whenever Tyreek and Jalen were on the field together. And they went down to an average offense when one of those two, or maybe both of those two, were off the field. Even while Tua was throwing the ball, it was just kind of an average pass offense. This time around, we noticed in training camp they were kind of experimenting. We talked about it before, like, you know, maybe they're looking at trying to make sure that they can have a potent offense even when one of those guys are off the field. And it would have surprised you to know that they were only on the field together for about half of the pass plays. They Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, they were. So but the efficiency was just as potent when one of them was off the field as when they were both on the field. In fact, it was slightly better. So I think that's a big step forward. That's a big positive for the Miami Dolphins, and it keeps everybody fresher, keeps them able to run just a max Q the entire time, and I think that's good. The other one is complementary football. Emblemized really by that big long touchdown to Tyreek Hill. The reason McDaniel isolated that as his favorite was because we had the big interception in the end zone, and J.C. Jackson had to come out, but then the offensive players did a good job getting J.C. Jackson down at the 4-yard line, and then the defense played complementary football and held them, and then with the big sack, as we talked about. And then the special teams executed, and then the next series they have the big play to Tyreek Hill. But how did that big play happen? As Alf talked about, they Mike McDaniel and Tua Tagovailoa came to Tyreek on the sideline and say, "What do you think about Z Sky?" which involves an outside release on JC Jackson, and Tyreek said, "You know what? I've been setting them up with inside releases all game. I think that's going to work well." And in particular, Tyreek wanted this to happen because JC Jackson just had that big interception, and he was flying high, his head real big, and he deflated him so fast with that big long touchdown. That's just a beautiful stretch of football. Another instance, complimentary football was the very end, where we saw that we scored, but we left them time, and obviously we had the missed extra point, which is not ideal, and so they could have gotten a winning field goal, and I thought the game was over because I thought that was going to happen, but the defense showed up. And that's complementary football. And the other thing, and I won't go into it even too much because we've already talked about it, is the offensive line. Give them their flowers. That was not supposed to happen the way that it happened. This unit coached by Butch Barry, maybe that turned out to be a good hire after all. We don't know. But they definitely did a fantastic job, and they deserve their flowers for that.
Alf, your 3 good? And if
my three good. I'm going to stop.
Minutes.
I'm going to start with a longtime radio host down here, Justin Bethel. I believe he'll be here 20 years when he retires in a couple of years, hosting podcasts or radio shows. I don't know how the hell he got himself ready to play when he walked right past me, and I looked at him, and I'm like, wow, there's no way this guy's playing this season, much less in a couple of weeks. And there he was, making plays at the end of the game. So I'll give some flowers to Justin Bethel. The interior offensive line was absolutely fabulous. Isaiah Wynn, Lane Meikenberg came in and ran a counterplay, by the way, to gain 6 yards. Okay, so that was nice to see. Like I said, Robert Hunt was my MVP of that offensive line, and I realized Kendall Lamb was absolutely fabulous. My third, I was debating whether it's going to be Kader Kohu, and I understand he played fabulous, but I think I owe an apology. I spent all preseason and most of the offseason wondering how Durham Smythe is going to help this offense as far as timing because he's so painfully slow. Didn't look slow to me. He looked like an effective tight end. He had a great game, and he's a good player. And I think he's an important player because I think the drop-off behind him on the team is as large as there is. Because I understand Tyreek Hill is a special talent, but you do have Jalen Waddle in the unit, and you have a lot of talent behind those guys. Behind Durham Smythe, you have nothing. He is an effective tight end. He's a good tight end. I owe him an apology. And he was actually very, very good in this game. I'll give you a half. Kader Kohu was fabulous.
Yeah, I'll take 3 very quickly. I thought it was interesting to see the Eric Ezukanma role beginning to develop and see how that was. He had the toss sweep. He had the run on 3rd down. Picked up the first down, was called back on a penalty. Just very interesting to see how his role might be defined as a sort of a Deebo Samuel light. I was also going to say Justin Bethel, just for those 2 plays at the end. I thought that was just fantastic in terms of what he did and the blitzes. And interestingly, I noted that Javon Holland had 22 snaps in the box, which is the most he's ever had in his career high 14 tackles. Without really doing an awful lot, just being there, just being sound tackling. I thought our tackling by the corners and the safeties was excellent. I thought Caden was excellent. A couple of times he took on Josh Kelly full bore and got him to the ground. And I thought Holland, whilst not being spectacular, as I said, just did a very good job generally of marshalling, that back end. We'll touch upon the run defense, I'm sure, as we go forward. And with that in mind, Chris, your 3 bad things.
Well, I would say you got to look at the nickel package on defense. And this is where, I'll say this with my second bad thing, but on the nickel package on defense, that's where the Chargers made their hay running the ball over and over again. They ran the ball 28 times for 137 yards against Miami's nickel package. It was not much better against the base package, certainly either. The base package, they did even more potent damage because of that big 55-yarder. But it was just as bad. And so, though I have to give the nickel package some credit in as much as they only allowed about 5 yards per pass play, which is stupendous. And the dime, of course, with 6 DBs on the field, they allowed only 2.2, I think, yards per pass. It was 20 yards on 9 plays. They did some damage with that dime package, but the run defense had a nickel. You got to figure that out. The second one was David Long and his usage. We talked about it a little bit before. We touched about it before the show. He was only involved in base and not any of the specialty. Not a specialty base either. They did a specialty base at one point with all the big uglies, Christian Wilkins, Zach Sealer, Brandon Peely, and Raekwon Davis, in addition to Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips and Jerome Baker as the only real linebacker out there. So David Long wasn't out there on that, but he was involved in every other base package, which involves only 4 defensive backs. But the majority of the game is played in nickel and dime, and that means Andrew Van Ginkel was out there the whole time and not David Long. This is our shiny new toy, right?
17 snaps he had to Van Ginkel's 51.
Exactly. This is our shiny new toy. The offseason signing, David Long, we were very excited about it. So it was disappointing to see his very limited role. And then the last one was Xavier Howard looked a bit shaky to me. We talked about it during the game. As you put it, his hips looked a little stuck, looked a little creaky. He did get those penalties. And I hope that he starts to, play himself into a little bit more, fluid movement and starts to get it a little better within the defense. And those are my 3.
Alf, your 3 quickly before we run out of time.
Yeah, my 3 bad are simply this. I feel pretty good about my prediction that Jason Sanders will miss a 42-yard field goal in Kansas City to send us to Las Vegas and the Super Bowl. I'm very nervous every time he lines up for anything now. Okay. My next bet is David Long. Yeah, on that long run by Eckler, he completely missed the fit. He is just, not to get too much into the weeds, but to explain it very simply to our listeners. He's the Mike. He's playing on the hash. He has both A gaps, which means either side of the center. Everybody hit their run fits on that play except him. For whatever reason, he tried to crawl inside of Christian Wilkins. That's not what it calls for. Run to the open spot. If you run to the open spot, it's a no gain or maybe a gain of 2 at the most. And my last bad one is Connor Williams. He played a very good game, but please snap the ball better. I understand it didn't really matter too much in this game because we ended up winning and they could overcome a lot because of their prolific offense, but it will cost them more. And in this game, it probably cost them at least a touchdown. So please fix that.
Yeah, I'm going to go quickly with David Long. I don't understand it because, he's kind of a run fit. That's what he does. That's what he did at Tennessee. That's how he made his money. I don't want to see him covering Keenan Allen 46 yards down the field in man coverage. That is not what David Long is designed to do, and giving up big throws. The defense overall versus the run, we just got gashed over and over again. The good thing is that I think, I can't see that happening again with Vic. That just strikes me as something, but I do get a bit concerned about, not having a John Jenkins type that can come in and play defensive line and can be in that rotation. And thirdly, look, McDaniel, I thought he'd left the inability to not run the ball or the ability to not run the ball back in 2022, but it was very clear that running became tokenistic at times yesterday. It was just like, I'll just do a run just because I kind of feel like I have to, and then let's have 7 straight throws. You're not going to win. And Chris talked about complementary football. You're not going to win in December, January, and February if you ignore the run as much as look. And the passing game was great, but there has to be some marriage between the two. I would like to see a little bit more of the marriage of run and pass. But overall, a fantastic game, great game for the neutral, amazing game for the Dolphins fans. And it's on to Foxborough next week. We shall preview that game against the New England Patriots, who put up a very good performance for 3 quarters against the NFC champion Philadelphia Eagles yesterday, and really could have and should have won the game if Keyshawn Butte had managed to get his feet down in bounds. Despite some of the problems they had early on, they really came back and performed very well. Defense was very, very good in shutting down Jalen Hurts. So that will be another interesting game, nationally televised game, Sunday Night Football, Dolphins against the Patriots, and we will preview that on Thursday night. Thank you for listening to 3 Yards Per Carry. As always, we genuinely love the fact that you tune in week after week, month after month, year after year, season after season. You can join us every day on OnlyFins. It is $3 to sign up. That is it for an entire month. And you get all sorts of stuff, but you get to listen to us 3 talking shit all day, every day, pretty much about football, life, and everything else in between. We shall be back on Thursday. Go Dolphins.
Thanks for listening to 3 Yards Per Carry. You can subscribe via iTunes, on Podbean, or your usual podcast provider.
Looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection for a wide variety of statistics, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and an enormous selection of players and stat options are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million football fans who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/get100 and use code GET100. That's code GET100 at prizepicks.com/get100 for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.